Hey, it's Todd Daniele, and today I'm going to be in 3D Studio Max 2024, and we're going to go over modeling. Let me just bring in this reference. The torso here, not exact, I'm going to give you a basic overview of something generic like this, of K2SO, just because there's some interesting design shapes and the way things blend together. So I thought it would be a cool example of something that we can use Boolean and Retopology for. So I'm a big traditional modeler, but I see the current trend is that people like to build these things out quickly and then retopologize. So we're going to see if we can get that to work and exploit the use of that modifier. And well, let's just get to it. Okay, so what we're going to do today is start out with a primitive. We're going to use a sphere. I'm going to go to top viewport right here, click and drag, and you can see I'm set to centimeters as my units, but I want them to be, say, diameter of 32 inches, so I'm going to do 16 inches radius, and you can see I could use that value as I've said in other tutorials I've done. So we now have a 16-inch radius or 32-inch diameter sphere. We have 32 segments. For this technique, we're going to go high. We're going to go 128, and the reason we're doing that is because when we use retopology later, we don't want the segmentation of a 32 span sphere to be included in the assessment when it retopologizes. We'll get faceting. So I'd rather go with something very high and get a smooth result. So that's what we're going to do. So that would be the torso beginning right here. What we're going to do also is I'm going to come to the front viewport and Alt W to make it full. And I'm just going to rotate this 90 towards me. So I'm going to turn angle snap and rotate. That's 90 degrees. And the next thing I'm going to do is just convert this to edit poly, and I'm going to grab some of these polygons. So what I'm going to do is marquee around the top half of this, and you're going to have to zoom in, and I'm going to just come from outside the selection, hold control, and get those other polygons that I missed, and make sure I have a straight line, which I do. And now what I want to do is use the move gizmo, hold down shift, and just drag this up a little bit. Okay, and now we have this sort of capsule shaped thing going on. And what we're going to do, if I'm going to go to perspective and just show you really quick, the front of the K2SO has like this shape that's sort of like a cutaway. Let me bring it in so you could see. Just like a little cutaway of like a pill shape. So by doing what I just did, we're setting up that shape right here. You'll see more clearly once I get a little further along. So next thing I want to do is just quickly come in here. I'm going to grab the center edge of that area that I want to do this to. I'm going to just do a selection conversion. So I'm going to hold control and click on polygon, and then I'm going to grow that. And it's going to get a little out of sorts. We have an extra row or whatever. It's not a big deal, okay? So again, I'm not going to be super precise today. I'm just showing you a generic overview of something like that robot. I just thought it would be cool to see. So this has got like a little bit of an arc to it, and we want it to be perfectly flat. So what I'm going to do is go to Make Planar, and I'm going to go Z, and that just flattened it out. And then I'm going to pull it forward a bit like this. And you can see it kind of just pops off, and in the real robot, it actually transitions. So the next step is just to do some loop selections and delete some of those, just like I just did. We'll do one more, let's see. Sure, okay, so now we have that shape. And the next thing I want to do is just add some spans in here because I don't want a big gap in the spans. I want them to be relatively even. That'll help with the retopology algorithm, and it also will just make things look better. So what I'm going to do now is increase the segmentation just so that it's approximate to the average size of the polygons out here. So maybe a couple more. And I'm going to say OK. So that's the basic shape. Now what we're going to do is set up some operands that we can Boolean to make the actual cutouts for the arms and the neck and the bottom of this shape. So that's the next step. Okay, so I'm going to do this relatively quickly. I'm going to go to the left viewport, and I'm going to make another sphere. I'm not going to use auto grid. I want to do it out in space here. and just approximate the size I think I need. I'm going to pull that forward like this, go to perspective, that was P to get to perspective, and just pull this out to the side like that. Maybe offset it back a little bit. I think his shoulder, like his arm opening, is just a touch off-center toward the back. And I'm happy with that. And what I want to do is I'm going to drop this just slightly. I'm going to go to 64. I'm not going to go too low. So we're going to go to 64 polygons. And I'm going to just do a rotation so that this loop is sort of parallel to the cut I'm going to get. That's just going to make it a little cleaner. So it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just got to be close. I'm going to turn off the snap and go to the top viewport and do the same thing. I just want to like make sure that I'm sort of in the realm of getting a clean cut where I don't have a lot of little stray polygons, which I just did, and that looks good to me. And the next thing I want to do is reset X form. So we're going to just reset that. And then we're going to go to the pivots, effect pivot. We're going to center, align the world, and then come back to the stack and just collapse. Yes. Oops. Yes would help. I was going to say collapse 2. Yes. Okay. And then we're going to add symmetry. So next thing we're going to do is sim right there. Okay. So we have the mirror, and what we want to do is have that mirror plane be zeroed out. So make sure you're not on symmetry, but on the mirror. And then you check these values here. You can see they're all not at 0. So I'm just going to right-click each spinner. And then I'm going to just turn off slice along mirror. And now we have a perfect symmetry. I'm going to collapse that down. Okay. And now what we're going to go is top view and make another sphere. Drag out a sphere in the viewport. Approximate the size of the neck opening. It's a little smaller than the arm openings. I'm going to go to front viewport, move that up, go to perspective, rotate a little, and just move that back. It's a little bit offset toward the front of his torso. Again, I'm not going for an exact replica. I'm just trying to show you a technique. So there we go. Just a touch more. So that line, that first loop that I see, that edge loop, is sort of parallel to the surface. That's what I want. Okay, and now the last thing we're going to do is make another big sphere to cut away the bottom of the torso. So I'm going to go to front and just make a relatively large sphere like that. Going to rotate it with snaps on, okay? So I think snaps on is a good idea so that we get that grid going the way we want it. 90 degrees as it is. And now if we zoom in a little bit, I'm going to just move this up so that it kind of cuts them off, and then just rotate it just a touch. Actually, let's keep it like this, and then we'll get a clean cut, and we can always manipulate later with FFD. I think that's a better idea. So as I'm doing this, I'm pretty much unscripted. I'm assessing what should be done as I'm doing it. So I feel like that's a good move. So I'm going to stick with that. And then what we'll do next is start to Boolean some stuff out. So we have the main object, and if we go to the modifier stack, 2024, if you hit B, you'll get the list starting with B. There's Boolean, we'll say subtract, and we'll start to pick some stuff. So I'm going to say subtract, pick the two arms, and pick the neck. And right now, let me grab the front view. We sort of have what's going on here. We have this set up, and we have this cutout, not these gray pieces, this cutout and that cutout in place on the Boolean. So we're also going to subtract that giant circle to remove the bottom of the torso, and that's simply we have the base for the front. Okay, so next thing to do would be to come in here, and we're going to get ready for retopology. I'm not going to cover the back. The back you could simply make a cube, make it so that it fans out to meet the back, and you can make the cutout shape and just Boolean them as well. It does work just as well as what I'm going to show you. So now we're going to just say collapse 2. Yes. And what I like to do is to make this work a little better is I'm going to get rid of this ring of polygons. Go to element and get rid of this. I'm going to take away the depth because I don't like the way that Max or the Retopology modifier kind of assesses what's going on inside circular cutouts. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So let's just go one more. I'm going to go to border and delete that. Okay, so now we have a clean circle with no depth. I'm going to do the same for the arms. That's why I didn't rotate the bottom polygon, by the way, because that would have caused an issue. And you can see I'm hitting n-gons because of the cutout, right? So here's what we do. I'm going to come one row in and then double click. So I clicked first and double clicked with control held for a ring selection. Delete that, go to element, delete that, go to border, delete that. You can see I still have a little something there. And it's not a full border that we're getting rid of. So I'm going to go to edge, select one and Alt R. And because this is not a continuous surface, we're going to have an issue. It's not a big deal. So I'm going to just click the first edge. I'm going to hold down Shift and use Shift held down to select some edges. And then just delete those. Okay. Okay, a little tedious, but it's working. Delete that. Now you have a perfect opening there. And then the last thing I'm going to do, we have those two openings. We're going to slice this in half because I find that if we want symmetry later, why not just retopologize half? This was covered when they released this modifier for Mac. So I'm going to do remove positive. And now we have half the torso. Oh, you know what? We also want to remove the bottom ones. Let's do that too. So I'm going to do this, double click. I'm going to hold Shift and just start to paint around. Occasionally clicking because it'll start to reassess the polygons. You can see that's the little glitch I'm getting. So maybe like every 4 or 5 I'm clicking again. Okay, and I'm going to delete this. Go to element, delete that. And these last few polygons, we're going to just go to polygon level and delete these. Okay, and delete that. And now we'll go back up to slice. Okay, and collapse 2. Say yes for that. And now we have this. Now if we retopologize, let's just do it. And I say, I don't know, I want to go like 1800, 1600. Gets a good result, but it's a little soft over here and a little wobbly at the edge. So what we're going to do is come back down the stack and quickly I'm going to just select all the polygons, come down here to smoothing groups and clear all. And then what I want to do is select this loop of polygons here, and I'm going to give them 32 as their smoothing group. And because we don't have these, we don't have to worry about that. I'm going to invert the selection, and I'm just going to pick a number that's not even close to 32. I'm going to go 16. So there's 2 different poly groups. Then when I come to retopology, I'm going to just say smoothing groups. It's there anyway, but now that I have 2 distinct groups, it's going to use them in the calculation. So let's reset and compute, and I should get a cleaner result, which I did. It's crisper right here than it was before. So now if we look at that, it looks really good. We can use symmetry. I'm going to turn off slice along mirror and maybe just increase. Let's see if it'll work. All right, that's right here is not exactly what I want. Let's just see. Okay, so let's do a little vertex manipulation. Oops, after the retopology. So let's put an edit poly on top. Grab a vert. Move them over so that they're at the approximate center point. I'm going to move them forward a little bit. This is minor cleanup. For the result we're getting, I think this is pretty simple stuff to have to do. Let's do this. I'm going to just go to edge, double click that. Let's just go make it planar. X, third time's a charm. Okay, and then maybe just Alt R here and add an edge loop in just so it's a little more even. Not a big deal. And now we'll come back up to symmetry and take a look at what we got. And that looks good. So now we have 2 options as far as what we do next. We're going to make the neck and the armhole have like some sort of filling, but you could just make the depth and use a chamfer modifier if you want to keep the polygon count low, or you could crease edges if you wanted to go with open subdiv and increase the polygon count. Okay, so let's just quickly, after this edit poly here, below the symmetry, I'm going to fill in the arm opening a little bit. So I'm going to just do edit poly again. You can name these. I'm going quickly today. Border, select this border. You can see it's selected. And I'm not 100% sure what this looks like. Again, this is like a generic overview, but I want to do it a certain way because I think it'll look cool. So I'm going to use R for scale, hold down shift, and I'm going to shift and scale this in a little bit. Give like a little face, and then I'm going to do it again. And I'm going to do W and local. And I'm going to just move it along the Z-axis like that, so it's a little recess. And on the actual K2 cell, there's like a piece that fills this in. I'm just doing this for design purposes. I think it looks cool. So now when we do the symmetry, we have that arm opening sort of filled in, which is cool. So ED, edit poly, border, and I'm just going to do what I did for the arm opening. I'm going to do R for scale, hold down shift, scale it in just a little bit, do a second time, and then I'm going to move it locally along the Z, maybe a little bit forward, and say that's okay. I'm good with that. Okay? So now, right now, if we were to stop and just put a smooth on top, it looks okay. We can play with the smoothing values like that. It's a pretty good result actually, considering how low poly it is right now. Let's see what the poly count is. 3864. So there are a couple additional steps you can do. You can either add in loops manually if you wanted to. I mean, I think I'm going to do it anyway, even though the next step I'm doing will be a little help for this. I'm just going to break this up just a touch. I don't like having big spans. I like them to be relatively even. And then the next thing we're going to do, we could use data channel, and I think for me to show you that is probably a good idea. So just go above here. I also want to do one more step too, is these two. I want to do auto ring on flow connect and hit flow connect. Yeah, so that gave this a little better segmentation right here, and I don't think it affected how things look, except that it made a cleaner circle for the neck opening, so that's good. All right, so next step will be data channel. Before we add a data channel, there's one last step I want to do. I want to go down to this edit poly, and from the previous operation I did, you can see the edges are still selected, so let's just deselect so they're not in the equation when I do this data channel. And now in the stack, I'm going to go DA for data channel and add that in. And there is a preset button. We don't have a preset for what we're going to do, and I want to show you step by step what I'm doing today. So let's add operator, and we're going to do edge input, and you can see a visual difference in what we're looking at. By default, it's going to probably be set to selection. I did a real quick test run. So you want edge angle, and you can see there's red. Those are selected. This teal is selected, but not the way I want. Like, it's not strong enough, so I don't know that it will come through on a selection later. So we need to add something to give us control over that. So we're going to add scale. And now we have a scale value, and if I turn it up, you can see the edges are starting to turn color. And I would say that this right here may be too much, but we're going to go with this right now. So we're going to add an edge output now to the stack, and that's going to give us our selection. And we're going to keep the top one at selection. If it's not set to selection, do so. And it's usually set to replace. We want to do it to add, so that if I add an edit poly now, and I go to edge, my selection is there. And we can see we should check these and make sure we have what we want selected. This whole side looks good. This looks good. The bottom looks good. I do see right here, though, we're missing two edges that I do want. So I'm just going to control and click those to add them to the selection. And now I'm going to add a chamfer modifier. And just as a note, the two edges we're missing, you could adjust that scale value in the data channel further or lesser and have control over that, but you can always just do a simple selection if a couple edges are missing. So you can see now that my chamfer value is too much for this because we have some black showing. So I'm going to do is just bring that way down. And you can see also right now those edges that I did select are not being affected. So what we want to do is turn off min angle and come back up and again adjust this value. And even though it's a tight chamfer, I'm going to add a second segment here so that we have a clean sort of transition. And again, make sure that all the edges that I want affected are, and they are. And now if I come and just click off and hit F4 to turn off wireframe, we could see that we have a pretty clean mesh with the chamfers in place. And I mean, a pretty low poly count. We're at 6276 right now. If you wanted to, you could add either a smooth or weighted normals. I'm going to put a weighted normals on here and just see what the adjustments I make will do to it. So I'm going to use smoothing groups. Let's see, the blending, you can dial it up and down. You can see in the viewport that it's changing when I'm doing that. I like it right here. And then we have another smoothing value right here. And you can adjust that as well. I think that looks good. Like, I'm happy with that. I would look at another angle and say, all right, maybe somewhere in here. And the other thing too is right now we're relying on just the base mesh and chamfers. You could very well go above here, add open subdiv at the expense of poly count and turn it up as much as you like and clean that up a bit. I think I've shown in a short period of time that you can use the Boolean modifier and the Retopology modifier and a few little tricks and achieve a clean result, which we have here. And it's just a general overview. I think you can find Actually, you can find blueprints of K2SO on the internet if you wanted to build it. It's an interesting looking robot, so I thought it was a good example to use. If you found this helpful, I hope you'll like and subscribe below, or in the description for this video there's a buy me a coffee link where you can go and if you feel that I gave you something useful that you'll use in your career, you can buy me a coffee. So until the next video, I'm Todd Daniele. Thanks for viewing, and I'll see you soon.